Hey guys, I hope you had a chance to check out our last episode, which was a conversation with Eric Loftus from Cape and Islands Tennis and Track. We had such a great discussion about court construction. This week's episode is a conversation with Rishan Kuruppu. He has been a tennis director for many years, and of course, you'll get to listen to his bio here in a bit. I thought we could do an episode dedicated to helping a new tennis pro. So this conversation is very much centered around the career path from successful tennis coach to director, and some of the things you want to be thinking about early in your career. Some of these things we talked about are things I wish someone had told me when I first started teaching. Rishan had some of the best one-liners I think I've heard, like scores divide and skills unite. Little things repeated lead to big things completed, and speed is the enemy of progress. These are so great because they're just very simple, very profound, and super easy to remember. I do think that you will get something out of this episode, even if you're an experienced pro. If you're fortunate to be in that category, please share this episode with your peers, your staff, and anyone considering a career in the tennis industry. We have talked about how we have so few professionals entering our industry, so maybe this episode can help clarify some things for someone who's considering it. Lastly, you can visit our website at vidatennispodcast.com for more information about Vida Tennis, and you can follow on Facebook, Instagram, and or YouTube. Get ready to learn from one of the best out there, only here at Vida Tennis. Enjoy! Hello, everybody. Welcome to Vida Tennis, the podcast for those of us who eat, sleep, breathe tennis. Today, I'm excited to talk with Rishan Kuruppu. For the last 10 years, he's served as the director of tennis at the Roton Point Club in Connecticut. Before that, he was a director at Proform Tennis Academy in New York. He's also a private family coach in Greenwich and an executive leadership coach. He's written many articles for different tennis publications like the New York Tennis Magazine and PTR. He has a tennis podcast also called Zen Tennis by Rish. He played tennis for MTSU and was a member of the Sri Lankan Davis Cup team. Welcome, Rishan, to Vida Tennis. How are you doing today?
Good, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me. What a kind and generous welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And how are you doing? I know you just wrapped up your 11th season in Connecticut.
Yeah, 11 years at Roton Point. It's been an incredible journey. It still feels like day one for me, which is very exciting. So I'm very passionate about my work and excited for all the opportunities that have come along the way.
I'd like to start from the beginning. How did you get into coaching, and was that always kind of the plan for you? At what point, basically, did you realize that this is a career that you could pursue?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Jennifer. And I think there's a few things that I really loved. I loved tennis. I loved people, and I loved presenting information. So during college, I had a couple summers where I was asked to come up and be an assistant pro at a club in Connecticut called the Lake Club. And that's where I really started to see, wow, okay, this is what I enjoy doing. This is where the fun for me, the all day, was kind of like giving me an outlet for what I really already loved. So, obviously passion for tennis, passion for people, and a passion for presenting information. I never knew how far that would go, but I had small windows where I was like, okay, for the next 2 years, this is what I'm going to do. I do have to pay for college. I have a lot of other things that are going on. And it's just a great way to be also out in the Northeast where you have some exposure to a different energy and a different network, which I found very interesting.
That's really awesome. That's a big change going from Tennessee to the Northeast. I actually went to school in Tennessee as well.
Oh, wow. Where?
A school called Lankan Memorial. It's a Division II school.
Great.
We played ETSU, not MTSU. But I'm very familiar, and we've had a couple MTSU people. We've had Emma Doyle and we had David McNamara, who you know.
Of course.
Who also went to MTSU. You've seen it all. I mean, I'm sure you've been in the industry for quite some time, and you've seen some great coaches along the way. You've hired people. You've been a coach yourself. What would you say are some of the main qualities of some of the best hires you've had?
I would say that, they have to have a package of a few key components. For example, they have to have a personality that's positive, optimistic, and outgoing, right? I think they need to have a level of patience and perspective. I also believe that they need to have a form of measuring progress and recognizing potential and then ensuring for positive results. That's all really, though, in my opinion, Jennifer, it's really built into each person's philosophy for things, right? What are your guiding principles for operating, right? And as everyone matures in different phases of their career, I think the most important thing to do is say, okay, am I creating a set of principles that are valued and can be most helpful versus most hurtful, right? And so how you behave on the court, how you act on the court, how you communicate on the court will either help you or hurt you. But it really comes down to every pro sitting down and either doing it through their own reflective method or having a phenomenal mentor who would guide you and say, okay, these are the steps you need if your career would like to move from an assistant to a head pro. And what does the head pro to a director look like? And then what does a director to maybe owning your own commercial club look like, right? Mm-hmm. And so there are different phases, but the philosophy and the guiding principles are transferable through all of them.
Many ways that we can go from there, but I know we had talked about having those mentors, and I think that's really important. I haven't had like I wouldn't call them mentors, but it was more like just bosses, I guess, that I've had, directors that I've worked under that kind of showed me the ropes. And those are the positions that are most memorable to me, is when the director really took me in and taught me other things. Because as you know, there are many things in this industry when you come into coaching that you just don't know of, right? Like how to deal with people and how to present yourself, how to talk, your tone, how to best deal with many different situations that we deal with. So that's always great to have just that guidance. And like you said, the career path, I think, is something that is getting a lot better. Now you can study this in college. When we were figuring this out, that was not an option. So just like by having great people around you that kind of show you how you can progress in your career. How long were you teaching before you became a director?
So I spent 2 summers working as an assistant pro. And at that time, I had a wonderful conversation. I was sitting across the table from David McNamara, who you had. And we were having lunch, and he got a phone call from his former doubles partner back in Australia. His name was Matthew Breen. And he was starting Pro Form Tennis Academy in Rybrook, New York. And they had 4 pros, and they were looking to add more and build their business. So I came in, took an interview, and they hired me a couple days later. And I drove all the way from Tennessee in my 87 Nissan Sentra with 8 oil changes along the way, not even knowing I was going to make it because it's close. But I said yes because I wanted to see what that would take. Right. So to make a long story short, I spent 13 years at Pro Form Tennis Academy. So of all the people before me, no one remained. I was the last one after still another 15 people were hired after that. And along that 13 years, I went from an assistant pro to a head pro to a director, and all of that just sort of, I was ready to take on a new chapter. Running Roton Point, I became a director at 29 years old. So it was only 5 years where I was really an assistant and a head pro before I took on a tremendous opportunity. But a lot of that was, in my opinion, Jennifer, saying yes to what a lot of people said no to. Okay. And how I would describe that is, for example, when we first started Pro Form Tennis Academy, we had no teams, no ladies teams. We were on the beginning stages. We had a team captain come and say to the staff and to the boss, the main director, we'd love to have a team here. Would anyone be interested to coach us? No one said yes. I said yes. And I sat down with 18 women, Jennifer, in a room, and I talked to them about peace, friendships, collaboration, and the process. And to make a long story short, those relationships still remain. And we had the best record in the United States, 24-0 at
Wow.
3. And that put us on the cover of the USTA National Magazine. It had nothing to do about winning. And so my whole framework is say yes to everything, over deliver all possible expectations imaginable, and enjoy the collaboration with others in the most meaningful fashion. And so I took on different opportunities by just saying yes along the way. And that was kind of like my track record for always delivering and over delivering.
Right. There's so much good in there, because when you say yes to things, especially things that you're not too sure of, right? You're stepping out of your comfort zone. That's just going to make you better. Do you know why the other coaches said no? They just didn't want to work with a ladies team, or what was it?
Yeah, it's again, there's a lot of things you have to deal with, right, on a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
There's personalities, there's lineups, there's differences. There's are we here to win? What is our objective? But yeah. I am, if I may be honest, I'm a teacher by default and a peacemaker by natural being. As a result, I love going into the most difficult environments and saying, what are the possible resolutions here, and how can we all thrive in this together? And that's very hard because, again, a lot of times, and I have this phrase, scores divide and skills unite. Now, if a skill is something that's intentional about lifting others up, right? Mm-hmm. And not saying, okay, you got 5 points, you got 4 points, you're better than me, so you must mean that you're more entitled to play in a better role or a better position. So mm-hmm. I never use scoring in anything I do, because I believe in inclusive and not exclusive. And so again, this really all comes down to having a strong personal philosophy for what you believe in that you want to accomplish. And that's really been my guiding light, is I've never had to be anybody different than myself.
Yeah. You always end up finding your people, I think. Space for everyone. And I think a lot of coaches, I mean, certainly that I've worked with, there's all kinds of personalities. And I've talked about this before too. When you first start teaching, it's really hard to show your personality. A lot of coaches, when they first come in, they're very quiet, unless they're just naturally outgoing. It can take some time for people to develop that skill of being social and joking around and kind of showing your personality. But I do believe that tennis people are the most fun people, especially coaches. I think they tend to be really fun people, right?
It's very outgoing, great personalities. And that's important, is you want to have people that you want to work alongside, Jennifer. I think that's a crucial part of it.
Absolutely. You have to be a people person, I think, which I can be, and sometimes not so much. I have my moments where I just like to be by myself. But I do love being around people and working with people. What has been your favorite part about teaching tennis and being a tennis professional?
So for me, the joy comes in seeing the success of others.
Yeah.
So that's really where my joy is taking someone's ability that might be a little ordinary and then making it a little extraordinary, right? And then seeing all of the great paths that takes them. Because I'm a firm believer that as your skills improve, your confidence improves, your social ability improves, your paths in terms of directions, in terms of tennis improve, whether it be leagues, teams, social. So there's this whole other arena of exposure that comes when someone tastes that level of success and confidence. But it comes through, I believe, the coach having a personal responsibility to protect and preserve their best interests. And that's a very difficult thing, because I feel like to be an effective coach, you have to be so dialed in to that time with them that there's very little distraction that's going through your thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. And as a coach who, and I call this sustained concentration cycle. So I coach this to my team. And it's really about how to operate at the highest level for 60 minutes in sustained concentration cycles. And so as someone does that, your level of observation acuity, which means basically you know exactly what you're looking for as maybe a potential challenge, and you can quickly diagnose that within 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And so once you do that, now you have a design to implement possible change in the smallest manner, repeated over the longest time, is what takes progress forward. So as someone starts to look at that as a tool and as a skill set, then they will also find success in other people's joy. And then going to work is probably one of the most exciting parts of the day, which is why I really love what I do, Jennifer. And I really hope that others can find also that level of excitement and joy, because I think it's there. I just think that they have to find it in a way that's meaningful for them.
And what do you think are some of the common challenges that the pros encounter along the way?
Yeah, that's also a great question. I mean, I think not feeling like they are learning anything new, right? I feel like they don't have the guidance to know what to look for and to help understand how to prescribe the right solutions, right? Because the other part of it is growth, right? Like, how do you grow and how do you add more value to your personal package, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think many pros realize that in itself, and then don't have the education from someone who's maybe thinking about that as the most important principle in their philosophy, and then imparts that along the way to their team, right? Mm-hmm. And so once you look at some of those challenges and then you can solve for that, I think that it becomes an amazing opportunity where growth moves forward, right? The value of their lessons look better, they're appreciated. Members view you at a higher standard, and it looks like you're learning and they're learning as student and teacher side by side, which is a beautiful thing. But that is something that I wish every club had someone who would do that for their teams, because it would be an amazing growth opportunity for our industry to be collectively much better and operate in a really smooth manner.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite tools for learning? Are you talking about like certifications or just in general?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are certifications, which I think are an amazing education platform. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I think that they are great for one area, but I think the other area is that personal one-on-one connection with a real example who does it day in and day out. So for example, right? I think an assistant coach may not know how to perfect the quality of their shot on an individualized basis and put it in an area that provides hope but still challenge to their prospective member, right? Mm-hmm. So going out there and working on ball control skills in a number of different manners and different styles of play that make you extremely competent in deliver that perfect ball, right? Another thing would be the ability to explain a complex problem in the most simplest manner using the fewest words. That comes from the director themselves. Mm-hmm. How about what is service and hospitality? Okay. Are you willing, if they see the director pick up trash along the pathway to the court, it's a great example. They're willing to do the same because that represents everyone as a collective and we all look better because of that, right? So I love the certification platform. They're great for one avenue, but I love that personal trench work mentality of leadership through example, through a tremendous amount of time put in to your team through looking at all of the challenges and solving for them before day one of the job.
How big is your staff now? And do you still spend a lot of time on court?
I am involved in every single process. So I have a great team of 10 people, 4 full-time pros, another team that does different parts. So I have a very good sense of time management, delegation, and then efficient processes that make everything run very smoothly. So to answer your question about on court, I spend no more than 20 hours on court a week, if that. And between all of that, I spend the morning getting the courts ready, leaving very late at night. I'm the first and last one. Jennifer is kind of my own mentality. And I love the idea of little things repeated lead to big things completed. And that's what I prescribe to my team is for them to grow, they also have to see Rish nailing in a line on the court because they're going to know how to nail the line in correctly. Mm-hmm. When they see Rish sweeping a court, they're excited about saying, Rish, can I help you? Right. Yes. It's and then it's getting them also involved in the event structure. It's getting them involved in the reservation policies. So I like to think of the team as an athletic entrepreneur. They are involved in every aspect of the business so that when they go somewhere, there's nothing left under a rock that they don't know. That's, I think, crucial.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for how often do you meet with your staff? Like, I'm guessing you're at a seasonal club, so it's a little bit different. And it's hard actually to have meetings when you're in the thick of it in the middle of the summer. But you've also worked at year-round clubs. So in just kind of in general, what do you think would be a recommendation for like how often to meet with your staff and just check in?
Yeah, and I think that if there was a time to meet with everybody, if there was something really to be addressed as unified, once a week or so. But I don't think there really needs to be a prescribed day or time. But I think that everyone should be aware of things that are going well, compliment them and celebrate them, but also be truthful in certain things that they can act on in a different way that make them look better. Right? And that could be just passing them by at 12 o'clock and saying, John, you did an amazing job in that lesson. It would mean a lot to not only the member, but to you if you move some tennis balls off the service area line, prevent anyone from falling and create a more of a safety approach to delivering a great lesson. Mm-hmm. Now, he would take that in a very punctual, polite manner. That helps him and that protects the member. Right. So I think having a great dialogue that's all day long during moments that require it and feeling approachable is crucial.
I think, yeah, like you said, just being open and I do like to have meetings every now and then. I think they do come in handy just because sometimes you're rushing, you're doing a million things. So I do enjoy even as a pro to have those moments to sit down and just kind of evaluate how this
Yes.
went or what we're looking forward to doing. I think that does come into play. But yeah, there's no specific recipe to it, I'm sure.
No, correct. Very true, though. And it is good to have structure, and it's good to have set times for things. And there's a great ebb and flow that work around all of that, which is really nice.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the most common mistakes that teaching pros make when they first start teaching tennis? Maybe when they're in their early 20s and they're just in college or just came out of college and they're first starting to teach?
Yes. That's a great question. And I think that there's two parts to it. I think that they want to impress people,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to entertain people, right? And those are two, they go hand in hand because looking to stand out, right? And so I see too often we lead with our ego, but we don't lead with thoughtfulness. And so my advice is to young pros is learn to educate yourself in terms of how to make the experience better for your member than yourself to look good, right? So hitting fancy shots and really creating this entertainment-driven hour should be more focused on creating value, reflection, thoughtfulness, and how to do that where you have fun, but in the most productive manner.
Yeah, I think if I had to look back on this and when I first started teaching, I think the main mistake that I made, just, as we're talking about this, is I think I was trying to emulate the coaches that taught me.
Yes. Yes.
And I wasn't really being myself. I was just trying to be like they were. And let me tell you, that did not work out. I learned that pretty early on. When I first started coaching, it was in a college team environment. And I was like trying to be this like super tough, like just tough personality. And that's not how I am at all.
Yeah.
And it's just funny now looking back. It's like, I don't know what I was doing, but it's funny because for different people it's different things. For some people it's just finding a voice and being outgoing. I think there's just different challenges there. And I think again, being in a good environment with good coaches that you can sort of emulate, but then at the same time try to incorporate your own personality and your own way of thinking about the game and your own beliefs. I think it takes time. I think, I mean, at least for me, it probably took me, not that I'm perfect now by any means, but to like really find my groove and like my way of teaching, I think at least 6 years. I don't know. What do you think for yourself?
Yeah, it takes time. It really does. Figure out what your style is. But I also think it's really as you do it more and more with time, you learn how to customize and be creative about what you're trying to solve for, right? So that's really where the imagination and the creativity and the presentation and the customization come in. So once you start to do it a lot and there is that focus and concentration driven toward that outcome, then you find your approach, right? Mm-hmm. And that approach could come in 1 year for some. It could be 5, it could be 15 or 20. And there's timelines everywhere in between. But it really comes down to what that coach really wants out of their time on the court and whether they're reflective enough to make the necessary changes and approaches to help themselves.
Right. And to help the student, because and we've talked about this on the podcast many times, is that not everybody's looking for the same thing, right? And every club is very different. You are at a seasonal club, so I'm guessing I'm not familiar with your club, but I'm guessing it's somewhat similar to the clubs that I've been to in the summers, that they're very family oriented, more of like a resort style. What does that look like for you?
So I've been very fortunate to create a culture in which learning is appreciated, respected, and welcomed 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. So I have everything for everybody. And again, that's where I said, skills unite and scores divide. So to make a long story short, I've created this culture of learning, mm-hmm. of wanting to get better. Everybody. So that's what's really been joyful to me, is the philosophy for patience, progress, educating the team. We're all in this to make everybody better. I say that because every club is different. And I think if anybody can make it the way they wish they could spend all day long enjoying that, because it's something that's for them, that's a beautiful thing. Like, that's like a match made in heaven. And I think that's what we should all pursue. But every club is different, and it really goes down to what you want to create.
Right. I mean, I think as teachers, we always want to teach, right? I mean, that is the main reason we're there for. That's what we're getting paid to do, right? Is to make people better and teach them, how to get better. I think what I've noticed, at least from my experience, is that I'm able, in that very short time, I can really make a difference tactically, especially when it comes to doubles, like really teaching the doubles game, where to stand, where to go to. But technical stuff is a little bit tougher because it's a very short period of time, and you can help, but then they're gone after the summer and you don't see them again, and they might go back to their old habits. So I don't know if you get to see your people year round, or like, how does that work out for you?
I don't. I mean, I kind of have my summer, and then I take a little bit of time off, fall, winter, to kind of, do a lot of the writing, the podcast, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm a firm believer that we should look for the largest challenges and solve with the smallest changes. Okay. Now, if we did that, right, in the most thoughtful manner, we can look over 12 weeks and say, did that large challenge look slightly less of a challenge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would be huge, right?
Yeah.
Now, are they moving a little better than they had started? Great. What is it about their movement that we solve for that looks better now, right? And then what you really want to do is, and what I said earlier is you want to protect and preserve so that they can stay in the game the longest possible time in their life, right? Because if they're out of the game, there's nothing helpful there. So teaching posture, teaching technical awareness, teaching mindfulness, teaching an understanding of thyself in terms of how to slow down, because I believe speed is the enemy of progress, and help them understand certain small changes within the landscape of a big jungle. And then you do it in the most kind, authentic, genuine, positive, unforceful manner. They will follow you and do exactly as you suggest. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to instantly have a comparison. Wow, this feels a lot easier than it did earlier. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's pursue that feeling. Now, in 1 hour, they've just had a comparison. Now you've pursued a new feeling. Now they can't wait to get back next week and make that feeling last a little longer. That is having a real approach to change.
Yeah, I love what you said there. Speed is the enemy of progress. I'm gonna have to steal that one from you.
Okay, you got it.
That is so good. Speed is the enemy of progress. I really like that because it's so true. Everybody, and sometimes even the coaches, like, we want to go faster, and really it's just slowing down, breaking things down. It really makes a difference. So I could not agree more with that. And I'm going to steal that saying, just so you know. What do you think is the most common mistake that directors make or boards when they're hiring a tennis pro? Maybe some of the things that you've learned from hiring people.
There are so many different clubs and structures and personalities on boards and directors. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But I do think that what everyone should look for is someone who has a great hospitality approach, has a great service-driven approach, and someone who can deliver value consistently. That is really, really crucial. The opposite of that, right, is to hire for skill, playing ability, maybe a lot of, great results or a name or whatever it is. Once you look for the wrong values, you have a bigger problem than looking for the right solution first. So hospitality is taking care of others, creating an experience that's collaborative, that's meaningful, it's thoughtful. And can you deliver value on court, off court? Can you build a team of values? Can you create a court that's pristine and maintained and create value in that operation? And just an overall system that's built on those three pillars. And I think if more clubs did that, I think you get an overall better experience across the board.
Yeah, I do think that a lot of times, especially boards, if they're not tennis people, they're not in the tennis industry, it's kind of difficult for them to know who to hire. A lot of the times it's like you get blinded by their playing background, and then you don't know, like, how are they going to be as a leader, right? And that's a very, very different thing.
Very different.
But how can you tell? I mean, are there any specific things that you look for when you're hiring someone?
If you're asking me about my hiring process, so I look for values. That's my number one thing. Is I look for values. I go through a very stringent hiring process to go through patterns and responses that I have looked at, and I look at the person's values that align and how they genuinely be helpful to me, and we can move forward in the process, right? And it has nothing to do with how good of a player you are, but it all has to do with how they communicate certain things to me that I ask them, which raises my probability of getting the best possible candidate. Now, I go sometimes months and months looking for the diamond in the rough, and I'm very thorough as to what I'm looking for. But I look for values. I look for good people who really want to make their own lives better, and the experience with me transfers into a better life for them. But they have to be looking to also get better, because I want to get better, right? And so if we share the same values, then it's great. It's great.
No, I think that's a great way to look at it. I think that can be tough when you're interviewing someone. They're on their best behavior, right? So it's really hard to really get a sense for what that person is like.
It's hard also, and I also think clarifying misunderstandings at the very beginning is very important, right? So what is the goal? What is the objective? And I give people a very clear blueprint as to what we're all about. And they say to me, yes, I'm in, Rish. This is exactly what I want. And if it's not what they want, they certainly can find something else that is more aligned to what they do want. That's, I think, very important, is to be very clear, to have no misunderstandings from the very beginning, and set the vision and set the blueprint up that they say, yes, this is where I want to be. That's crucial, because you can always have a meaningful conversation to them in a very kind way and say, if things are going a little off, well, you read this back, and before we started, these are the things that we wish to work together on to make this the most peaceful time together for 4 months. Situation going slightly, is it making it more difficult or is it making it easier? And through the art of conversation and having a real blueprint for the expectations to have with each other, it all gets resolved. There's no perfect match, but I think you can get as close to finding the right people as possible.
I think having a very clear description, a vision, like you said, I think that's one of the things where maybe sometimes boards lack when they're hiring for a director, or maybe even directors might lack when trying to hire a tennis pro, is not having a clear vision of what you want that person to be like, what that person's going to be doing. If you don't have that set and really have a clear vision on what you want, I think it's really hard to find a good fit that's going to stay. So I think that's one of the things that stick out to me many, many times.
Yeah. In your experience, you notice that to be a kind of like a recurring pattern?
Yeah. And it's hard sometimes for a board to have a clear vision because they don't necessarily understand the tennis business and the tennis industry, or what are really the responsibilities of a tennis director. Because I think a lot of the times people just think you're just teaching tennis and having fun, and they don't realize all the things that go into that job outside of the time that you're actually on court teaching. There's so many things that you have to coordinate, right? And it takes a very organized person. It takes a really good communicator. It takes a person that is skilled with technology, with marketing, with, there's a lot of other things. And I think that a lot of times that's really misunderstood in our industry.
Correct. You're spot on. And it's amazing because the same skills that a tennis director has are the same skills that a high-level executive has in their own business, right? It's all very similar in nature, right? But I think that recognizing the complexity and the scale and the volume and nature of and scope of work, which is hours on end, providing services and structures, that is a very, very difficult thing to do day in and day out, right? Mm-hmm. And so once boards can recognize that, and every club is different, I think that just makes it a much easier hiring process, but also they're also more likely to want to keep you happier, right? Because they realize the value in having somebody very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So speaking of these, are there any things that stick out to you, or of things that you would like to see change in the industry?
That's a hard question also.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I would love to see more assistant pros, more head pros, and just overall tennis professionals see a better path for them in terms of their own growth, their own value, and realizing that you're an entrepreneur. And you're not just a tennis coach, but if you can look at a 10-year plan and you say, wow, being a tennis pro could lead to being a tennis director, which means I'm now the CEO, I'm now the business owner. That is who I want to be. And if they can create a pathway for that, to do that, that'd be huge. I would love to see every pro become more successful, do what they love to do, and reach the goals that they have in the most fundamental manner.
It's really interesting now because I think our profession is not necessarily changing, but there are things that are very new. Like I was on Instagram yesterday and I saw these coaches who are just basically getting lessons through Instagram. I didn't know if you know about that.
No, I do not. Please share.
Well, I don't know how that business model works. I don't know. But there's a lot of different things coming out and different ways of providing tennis. Some pros like aren't even like at a club. They just, you send them a video and then they help you out and they look at your technique. It's just there's different like specializations that I'm seeing, and it's just really, really interesting.
Seeing all of these different like ways to reach people are getting broader and broader, right? And you're about Instagram being one of them. Different platforms are creating different ways to. I almost feel like, again, like speed is the enemy of progress, but we live in a satisfaction-driven world that's instantaneous. So all of these areas are coming in as a byproduct of the necessity and convenience to speed. That's what, right? So, but is there anything wrong with that? I don't know. But it really depends on whether that's being helpful on the receiving end of the other person.
Right.
And if there's value there and it's helpful, then great. But if it's creating more of a difficulty, then there may not be a place for it, right? But only time will tell.
Yeah. And are you teaching pickleball and padel or any other racket sports at your club?
No. So no padel, no pickleball yet. And and you know, pickleball is a big growing sport, right? And we'll see. I think, again, every club is different in terms of not just demographics, but location to homes, water, et cetera, et cetera. And as you know, pickle has some challenges that still need to be addressed, right? Like noise and injuries and stuff like that. But certainly it is growing, but it all depends on where the club is and what things look like. How do you go about your pricing strategy with pickle and all the other sports? How does that work for you guys?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think every club does it a little bit different. It's the same price as tennis.
Yeah.
So the price of a private tennis lesson is the same price for a pickleball private lesson, and a group lesson for tennis is the same price as a pickleball group lesson. And I've talked about this before too, because a lot of clubs, I think, add pickleball because it's an added value to the members, but not necessarily going to increase the revenue that you bring in as a director, especially if your club doesn't charge for court time, right? So if you're not charging for court time, how are you really going to be monetized in pickleball? Pickleball has a very low learning curve, right? People learn and they want to play. So if you don't charge for events, then it's like, you know, how are you as a director now going to bring in money from these added responsibilities for now you're adding a totally different sport, more programming, more things, you know? So yeah, I think it's a little bit different for every club. Everybody's kind of figuring it out based on their needs and how they're set up. But yeah, because some places bring in a ton of money. I mean, if you're charging for court time, right?
Yeah.
Pickleball is going to bring in a lot of money because you can have, in a very small space, you're going to have a ton of people. So
yeah, that's well said. That's a really good point. Yeah, and I think you're right about all these clubs are trying to figure out how much of revenue actually can come out of some of these new programs. And will they take away from existing revenue that comes from the biggest supplier, which is tennis, right?
Right.
And then how to ebb and flow between all that, because now you've got far more responsibility if you're doing multiple racket sports.
Again, it comes down to having a clear vision, right, of what you want. Because if you're just like, oh, this is a trend, I'm going to add pickleball, and you don't really have a plan for how you're going to make it a successful program and bring in revenue, then it might not work out very well.
Exactly. You're 100%.
Yeah. So if you don't mind sharing with us, what has been the Grand Slam moment and the double bagel moment of your coaching career?
Okay. Grand Slam, I'd say probably from a coaching point of view is when I took that ladies team, in 2010 to the national championship, and we had that best record, and we create a memory in this book, and everyone's still great friends, and we had some recognition for that. So that was definitely a Grand Slam moment as a coach. A double bagel moment. When I first started teaching, right, I fell down and I hurt my shoulder and I couldn't teach. And it was extremely painful. And that led to me contemplating whether I can even do this. So that initial disappointment, setback, frustration always kind of still remains, because it helped me move past that in a really positive way, and then go back to teaching and still end up with a decent summer.
I think a lot of pros would agree that injuries are definitely the lowest points as a coach. It's just like, you can't bring money, you can't work, you can't, help people. And it's just really, really frustrating, especially if it's your right arm and you're right-handed.
You certainly don't want it to be your dominant hand, right? That's for sure. That's for sure.
That's the worst. Well, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for spending time with us today. Best of luck. How can people reach you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can certainly check out my website. It's www.rishankuruppu.com. They can find me on Spotify and Zen Tennis. And those two are probably the two best ways right now. I just want to thank you, Jennifer, for the opportunity, the time, and this amazing conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you so much for listening to Vida Tennis. I really hope that you are enjoying these episodes. And if you are, please let me know by leaving a review on the platform you're tuning in from. You can always reach out to me at vidatennispodcast@gmail.com if you have any specific questions, comments, or if you just want to say hi. I wish you all the best, and I will see you next time for another episode of Vida Tennis.